Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. I think that for today, this will be the best way for you to receive all the information you need. We are going to move right along very quickly. And so hopefully on this 3:50 early day, you can have enough time with your PLC to be able to share with each other and learn a little something. So we're going to start with our agenda. Today, we are going to watch this video, and then we're actually I would like you to complete the response form electronically, one per PLC, please. And then I want you to take some time to explore FastBridge. I know that we want to get started and implement FastBridge and get those assessments done as quickly as possible. And so I ask for your help in making sure you've prepared yourself to be able to assess our kids. So with that, we're going to get started. So today we're going to be talking about the universal tier and effective literacy practices. And this is something that I was able to attend training on previously through C4K, and then last week I had the opportunity to attend training provided by the Iowa Reading Research Center, Dr. Deborah Reed, as well as in collaboration with the Department of Ed. So we're going to get started. First and foremost, any child can't develop the skill of reading until they have a basic knowledge of phonological awareness. So with phonological awareness, we need to remember that it starts with phonemic awareness, which is hearing those sounds. So hearing, identifying, manipulating sounds. This is before we ever introduce print. So if you think about a baby and a toddler and the progression that a child makes, you're doing sing-songy rhymes, and kids are starting to feel the rhythm of things. They hear alliteration in just playful talk and just the world around them. And so those are skills that are built from the time that they're born up until they're ready to be introduced to print. When you think about the progression of phonological awareness skills, it's important to remember that it progresses along from the left side of the table to the right side of the table. This is the least difficult, and this is the most difficult. So word awareness is the least difficult of phonological awareness, and that is just hearing sentences, segmenting those sentences into spoken words, and identifying spoken compound words. So if you remember the PAT test that we used to administer, and we say birdhouse, tell me the two words you hear in birdhouse. Birdhouse. That is part of word awareness. When we think about syllable awareness, that's when we're taking those words and we're breaking it down even further into syllables. So, and we're thinking about spoken words and the syllables that make up those words. Then we proceed to onset rhyme awareness, and onset rhyme, onset would be the beginning sound, and rhyme would be those like word families is how I like to think of them: at, an, ap, it, op, up. Those are rhymes. And segmenting those, producing rhymes, producing alliterations. And again, all of these things are done without ever exposing them to anything print. So these are just sounds. And then it is actual awareness of individual phonemes and realizing that each phoneme makes a letter. So this is the part that is so tricky when our kids have missed these skills. It's hard because we immediately want to jump into phonics, and sometimes they do need actual background in phonological awareness and understanding phonemes. when we've mastered phonological awareness, the next progression is phonics. And again, phonics, you remember, it's when you are actually viewing print with sounds. So it's letter and sound. And there is a right way to teach phonics and a wrong way to teach phonics. So we're going to really work on the right way to teach phonics this year. And that would be systematic teaching and learning of all those 44 phonemes. When we think about the progression of phonics that we should use and follow, again, this progression goes from the left side here over to the right. So starting with letter sound knowledge. So that's where we're teaching our kids all of the sounds, consonants, vowels, short and long. We're learning blends. We're learning consonants that make two sounds, such as G can make the G sound, but J can also make, excuse me, I'm not thinking of, like, G can make J or G. Excuse me, there we go. Can make the J sound. So then we look at vowel digraphs, which would be like EA or AI or OE, and then R-controlled vowels, which would be your ER, IR, OR, AR, UR, whatever vowel you put with R. Sight word knowledge. So once they have attainment of these skills, then that moves on into sight words. And with sight words, high frequency words and then lower frequency words. And then into syllable type, such as vowel consonant, consonant vowel consonant, consonant consonant vowel consonant, and then into open syllables, silent E, vowel pairs, R controlled, and then LE and TION with the final syllable. And then that takes us into morphology. And morphology, actually, those are advanced phonics skills. And when our kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade often think that they shouldn't be learning any more about phonics, this is actually when they should be learning some of the most advanced skills related to phonics, such as morphology and other decoding skills. Base words, root words, prefixes, suffixes, derivational suffixes, and then into decoding skills such as compound words, contractions, possessive, silent consonants. So that was a quick overview of phonological awareness and phonics. We're going to now talk about those effective practices for teaching phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, spelling, and writing. And I know you probably heard me say spelling and went, what? So, effective practices for phonics. These are things that we're going to be learning throughout the year, but today is just a quick overview. So, effective practices for phonics that we are going to make sure in our whole and small group that we are using explicit instruction to teach systematic routines for syllable types and syllabication, and then phoneme grapheme mapping. And those are research-based, the two most effective phonics practices that we can make sure that we're teaching our students. Effective practices for fluency include repeated reading and echo reading. And I know there are lots of other effective practices, but research suggests that these are the two most effective practices in developing fluent readers. In vocabulary, the two most effective practices for teaching vocabulary include using maps and webs such as graphic organizers, and then also word origins and roots or affix instruction, including Greek and Latin. With comprehension, our work this year is going to focus on text structures, including compare, contrast, sequencing, cause, effect, summarizing, and then asking and answering questions. So this year we'll be spending a lot more time on those components. effective practices for spelling. And we do teach spelling. I know that a lot of times parents ask us if we teach spelling, and our quick response is, we don't teach spelling anymore. Well, that's not true. We just don't teach spelling the way that we learned spelling. So part of the Iowa Core, and also part of those practices that are most important for teaching students, include effective practices for teaching spelling. And so within teaching spelling, we're going to learn more this year about morphology. That was part of my training that I attended last week. Syllable types, grapheme phoneme mapping. So grapheme phoneme mapping was also an effective practice for phonics, but it comes back again in spelling. And finally, effective practices for writing. And this year we'll be working on the writing process as well as sentence combining. So when I say that we're going to be working on all of these things, we are going to be working on them over the course of this year. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of those practices that we are going to spend time learning more about. And you'll have this as a reference, but when you're finding resources in Journeys and other resources that are reputable, any of those skills and strategies that are included in what we talked about today are effective practices. So those are all things we want to see happening in our literacy block. We're going to go on and talk just briefly about our literacy block. And today I'm just going to briefly talk about the 90-minute literacy block, about the uninterrupted time. So we do have a new walkthrough tool that Kim and I have just briefly started using, and it really helps us focus on the literacy block. Some pieces that I hope I've communicated this previously, but I want to just make sure I've made it very clear, is that we need to be implementing our literacy block. It needs to be up and running, and all components, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I don't want to take very much more of your time. So our literacy block should include whole group instruction, small group skills-based instruction, and independent practice. Our whole group instruction, the learning target should be focused on specific grade level literacy standards. I encourage you to use Journeys to teach your whole group lesson, and your whole group lesson should be 20 to 30 minutes. You might want to start with 20 minutes, and then at the end of your literacy block time, wrap up with 10 minutes. So that's what I mean by it might be split between the beginning and the end. Your small group skills-based instruction time, when you are pulling those small groups of kids, those learning targets should also be focused on specific grade level literacy standards. You should have differentiated instruction. Students should be grouped by levels or by skill attainment. The group should be flexible with 6 or fewer students, and the time spent in those small groups could vary between 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how long it takes you to teach and students to practice. And then independent practice, that would be those skills that you want them practicing independently. They've had an opportunity to have guided practice either in the whole group time or small group time, and you want them to independently practice. They can do that by themselves. They could do that in partners. They could do that in their small group. And those learning targets should also support those that are part of your grade level standards. Students should be completing differentiated must-dos and may-dos. They should have teachers making contact with them every 30 minutes. They should have a product or a formative assessment to show for their work. And this is something that I want you to make sure that we've got this going on. So at this point of the year, you might have a lot of students doing the same must-dos and may-dos. And that's okay, because we haven't had a ton of data, and we want to support you more with using the data that you have. But this is just a very brief overview of our literacy block. I hope that this has been an informative and quick PD session, and I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.